connect evolution with Christianity and trying to make sense of it, trying to bring them together. Now, what is the gap theory? The gap theory is they believe something happened between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2, and to mix with this, they also believe each day of creation is millions of years, or there's a long process of happening between each day of creation in Genesis 1.
Church people.
In Genesis 1, where each day they will believe that each day was millions of years, so that way it'll cause, it'll be able for evolution. And we'll see what the Word of God says about that. From 1814, gap creationist was popularized by a guy named Thomas Chandler, who attributed the concept to the 17th century Dutch Armenian theologian Simon Escapius. I think that's how you pronounce his name correctly. So, but let's read what the Word of God says here. It says in Genesis 1:1, it says, "In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the earth. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the water." So they look at that. They look at verses 1 and 2, and with their own imagination, the gap theory is viewed that God created a fully functional earth before. So they look at 1 and 2, they say God created everything already. That had all the animals, including dinosaurs and other creatures we know as from our fossils, all these fossils and stuff. So remember, these people, they're trying to make sense of evolution with the Bible. So they look at the fossils and it says, well, in the Bible, dinosaurs is not in there. So maybe that happened between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. And then the theory goes that something happened to destroy the earth completely. And they believe this is when Satan fell, so that the planet became without form and void. And at that point, God started over again, recreating the earth in the paradise further described in Genesis 1. So there's a few things. They believe that in between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2, that God created everything already, but Satan fell and it destroyed everything. That's when death happened, and then God recreated everything again. And then it goes on from 2 to the rest of the Bible. Well, one thing we'll get to that is death didn't happen until after the fall of man, so that wouldn't go there. But we're going to read at how each day in the Bible is 24 hours. We're going to attack that one first. The second, we're going to talk about how death happened after the fall, how it doesn't make sense to have the gap theory, and then how dinosaurs were around with humans. So we can find all these things in the Bible, and it completely debunks what gap theory is. Now, for someone to say in the Bible that in Genesis that creation is millions of years, you can tell that they didn't read the Bible carefully. So back to Genesis 1. We read that in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, and earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. Now read this part. Verse 5, it says, "God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day." So there's some people who are in the group, in the gap theory, they believe each day would be millions of years. Well, if it's for one day is a million, just say one day is 1 million years, let's split that in half. How is it possible for life to create for 500,000 years of light and 500,000 years of darkness? It wouldn't make sense. Here's why it wouldn't make sense. If you skip down to verse 11, it says, God said, let the earth bring forth grass, and herbs yielding seed, and the fruit trees yielding fruits after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth, and it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, and yielded herb and seed after its kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after its kind, and God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning was the third day. Now, if each day, like I said, if each day is a million years, according to their belief mixed with evolution, then they're missing a huge major part. Life cannot survive with that much time of light. Because if we, like the picture that I showed where it's 500,000 years of light, if we're just narrowing it down to 1 million years, then the light will burn up everything green. Then if it's 500 years of darkness, it'll freeze everything green. So this is why it shows that creation was 6 literal days, like how we have now. It's 24-hour days, where it was 6 hours of light, 6 hours, or 12 hours of light and 12 hours of darkness. That way everything will circulate perfectly. Now, the second thing I wanted to talk about was how death happened after the fall. Now, like I said before, the people who created the gap theory, they believe that the fall happened right between Genesis 1-2. They believe God created everything. The dinosaurs died there. All the animals that we have in fossils died there. And that's when Satan fell. Well, if back to verse 13, Genesis 1:13. Not verse 1:13. Well, verse 12. At the end of it, it says, God saw everything that He made, and He saw that it was good. So if there was any failure, He wouldn't say that that was good, because prior to the fall, everything God made was good. So the gap theory shows death before Adam sinned, the view that God created a fully functional earth with animals. But let's look with Genesis chapter 1, verse 29 to 30. It says, and God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in it which is the fruit of the tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. And to every beast of the earth, and every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein that there is life. I have given every green herb for meat, and it was so. Food was for all. The source of food for all animals. So animals didn't go out and eat other animals before the fall. Everything that we saw growing, that was considered the food for the animals. Verse 31, it says, and God saw everything that He made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning was the 6th day. Now everything God made before the fall of man was perfect. It was without error. There was no death. There was no fall of Satan. Satan didn't fall this time. Everything was perfect. Now, if we read Romans chapter 5, verse 12, it says, wherefore, as by one man sin into the world, death by sin, and so death passed unto all men, for all have sinned. So this is when death entered into the world, when Adam sinned. And that's when, after Adam sinned, that's when death started happening. But before that, animals lived, would have lived forever. Humans would have lived forever. But after Adam sinned, it pretty much cursed everything, and that's when death entered. Now, dinosaurs. This is one of my favorite things to talk about in the Bible. We hear, well, we can't look for dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are not in the Bible. Well, it's funny, that thing, because dinosaur is more of a modern word. It's a modern term. It was created in 1841 by Sir Richard Owen. And it's an English word but it's the Greek is dinos, which means terrible or monstrous, and saurus, which means lizard. So dinosaur pretty much means a terrible lizard or monstrous lizard. And most often, these animals are referred to in the Bible as dragons, as we see in the Bible. Everywhere in the Bible, where it mentions an animal as such large things, they'll either mention it as a dragon. As in Isaiah 27:1 is, and he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. Jeremiah 51:34, you don't have to go to these, just listen. It says, he has swallowed me up like a dragon, he has filled his belly with my delicates. Psalm 74:13 says, thou breakest the head of the dragon in the water. Job 41:19-21 says, out of the mouth goes burning lamps, and sparks of fire leaps out. Out of the nostrils goeth smoke, as out of the seeth pot of cardon. His breath kindles coals, and a flame goeth out of his mouth. This is like a fire-breathing dragon, which this is actually talking about. And it's really amazing how we would call them today dinosaurs, as the Bible would call them dragons. Isaiah 36, it says, and a vipery, fiery, flying serpent. Now, it talks about that, but in the Bible it also describes two different kinds of dinosaurs. But today we're going to talk about one of them, and it's in Job 40. Job 40:14 and through 19. It says, and this is talking about, it says, behold now behemoth, which I made with thee, he eateth grass as an ox. Lo now, his strength is in his loins, and his force is in the navel of his belly. He moveth his tail like a cedar. Now, people will look at that and, they'll say, oh, that's a hippo or that's a rhino. Well, hippos and rhinos, their tails are really small. A cedar is a tree. What dinosaur do you know that has a tail as long as a tree? From cartoon movies, we'll call them brontosaurus, which I don't know the exact terminology of it. It just left me, but it'll be a brontosaurus is what we'll call this dinosaur. And God is talking to Job about how magnificent and big this animal is. It says, his stones are wrapped together, and his bones are as strong pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron. He is the chief of all the ways of God, and he that made him can make a sword upon his approach. Now, if you keep reading this, the Bible talks about how he swallows up pretty much rivers. I mean, this is a mighty animal, mighty beast. And as we see, dinosaurs were along with humans. And today, we do see some animals. That we could go into another topic about that, but that's what I want to show you, how the gap theory doesn't fit with the Bible. You can't mix evolution, which is a theory to debunk God, and that has no foundation. You can't mix that with the Word of God to say, hey, yes, it makes sense. Whereas we see that the Bible is a 24-hour day. The creation was made in 24 hours, 6 24-hour days. How the fall and death happened after David's sin, and how dinosaurs weren't just before creation, but dinosaurs were amongst men as well. So that's my sermon for today, and I want to give the floor to Nick.